Now recording live. Wanted to welcome everyone to the community forum hosted by AEP, as well as the Smith Mountain Lake Regional Chamber of Commerce and the Smith Mountain Lake Association. And wanted to take the opportunity to wish everyone the very merriest of Christmas. Stay healthy. We appreciate AEP's willingness to come forward with us and talk about some of the recent high water events that we've experienced at Smith Mountain Lake over the year, and wanted to also just kind of run through some rules of engagement with respect to the meeting and share some information with you. So again, if you would please make sure your phones are muted or your computers are muted during the call so that the panel of speakers from Appalachian Power can present their information. With regards to the video feed, again, if you'll disable your video feed so that we can ensure that the participants who registered are able to join the call from a bandwidth perspective. We did have up to 400 individuals who registered. So with regards to the questions that were submitted, there were nearly right at 100 questions that were submitted prior to the Thursday deadline. And I worked with John Rupnick with the Smith Mountain Lake Association to work through those questions. And there were a number of them that were duplicate in nature. And what we did was we tried to consolidate those because they really followed three key themes. The one being process or procedure, and the second theme being communications, and the third theme, debris or damage. So what we've done is we've taken those questions, all of them have been submitted to AEP, and what they've tried to do with respect to their presentation is to answer those questions and present information so that you understand the processes and systems that are in place and under review during a potential high water event or inclement weather. There were a number of questions. If they aren't addressed in the presentation, I'll take the opportunity to ask AEP and will request that one of their panel of experts address those questions. And then lastly, we will close out the meeting with Larry Jackson. We are slated to run this meeting through 6:30. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda Cox with Appalachian Power. Thank you.
Chris, I'm Amanda Cox, External Affairs Manager for Appalachian Power Company. And before we get started, just want to say thank you to the Chamber and the Smith Mountain Lake Association for convening this meeting. We're looking forward to talking about the Smith Mountain project in a little more detail with you guys. And at this time, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Neil Holthauser, who's our Plant Environmental Coordinator. So he can talk a little bit in more detail about that project. So, and answer any questions that the residents, business owners, and other stakeholders may have. So Neil, I'm going to share my screen and get the presentation up and turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. Welcome everyone, glad to have so many of you available online tonight. We're getting ready to start a slide presentation. And the goal here is just to kind of give you the highlights of the Smith Mountain project and how it works. Particularly, we want to dial into how water level management works at Smith Mountain Lake and Leesville Lake. So welcome to the Smith Mountain Pump Storage Project. Next. So residents at Smith Mountain Lake call it Smith Mountain Lake. And if you live at Leesville Lake, you call it Leesville Lake. But to Appalachian Power, we call this entire facility, which includes Smith Mountain Lake, Smith Mountain Dam, Leesville Lake, and Leesville Dam, we call it the Smith Mountain Pump Storage Project. Federal Energy Regulatory Commission license number 2210. So for Appalachian Power, this is one of 6 hydroelectric facilities that we operate in the state of Virginia, one of a number of hydroelectric facilities operated by American Electric Power throughout a multi-state region. Next. What is unique about this project is that we can recycle water between the two lakes, between Leesville Lake and Smith Mountain Lake, in a process known as pumped storage. Next. This diagram shows how pump storage works. So water from an upper reservoir, in this case Smith Mountain Lake, is passed through the dam at Smith Mountain Dam, running through the turbines to generate electricity, and then is released into the lower reservoir, Leesville Lake, where the water is stored. From there, water can be pumped back into Smith Mountain Lake. In the diagram, you can see water flowing back through the turbines at Smith Mountain Lake, at Smith Mountain Dam, pumped into Smith Mountain Lake. And in this way, we can reuse the water, or we can pass the water from Leesville Lake through turbines at Leesville Dam to generate even more electricity before we release that water downstream. Next. This pump storage process allows the Smith Mountain project to generate 636 megawatts of electricity. That's about 10 times more energy than is typically generated by a conventional run-of-the-river hydro facility. Some of you may have heard it called Magic Mountain at Smith Mountain Dam. That's because this project can generate a lot of power very quickly. Unlike other hydro generation plants like fossil plants, coal, or natural gas that takes some time to ramp up in order to produce energy, Smith Mountain Dam is very adept at creating energy in the moment on demand. So if you can imagine a very hot summer day when everyone is using an air conditioning unit, running multiple appliances, industries and factories are running at full tilt, and the grid calls for more energy, Smith Mountain Dam is uniquely positioned to create that energy very quickly. And then of course at night, when things cool down and the activity is less and people are running fewer appliances and the demand for energy is down, we use that time to pump the water from Leesville Lake back up into Smith Mountain for reuse.
Yeah, to Zoom now.
That's what was in that.
So in that way, Smith Mountain Lake acts like a giant battery. The primary purpose of this entire project, and again, when we use the word project, we're going to be using that term a lot tonight. We're referring to the entirety of the project, Smith Mountain and Leesville. And the purpose of this project, the primary purpose, is to generate electricity. Under our federal license, this is known as the, quote, project use. Of course, the project also has benefits for the local community by providing opportunity for public recreation, scenic enjoyment. I mean, it's a beautiful place. Abundant fish and wildlife habitat. And of course, also the project is a tremendous driver of economic development within a 5-county region in Southwest Virginia. Next. So Appalachian Power is responsible for managing this project. And it's a big project. It includes more than 25,000 acres of water, more than 600 miles of shoreline, and there are more than 13,000 individual unique parcels of land adjacent to the project boundary. Essentially, we have 13,000 unique neighbors living on the doorstep of the project. That's very unlike any other generation project, like a coal plant or a natural gas plant or a nuclear plant, where you might have very few neighbors. This project has a lot, and we're happy to have you. So that's a lot of responsibility for Appalachian Power, and the way that we manage the project, various operational and environmental aspects, is through a series of management plans that are incorporated into our federal license. These management plans are like playbooks. They have the benefit of telling us in advance how we're going to act or how we're going to behave when certain situations come up. It's good planning. So we have an erosion monitoring plan, a sediment monitoring plan, aids to navigation, aquatic vegetation. We have a cultural resources plan, a habitat management plan, recreation management plan, of course, shoreline management plan, and a water quality management plan. Many of you on this call tonight have probably been involved as stakeholders in helping us to prepare these plans. We don't do this in a vacuum. We prepare these plans with guidance from the federal government, state and local government, area stakeholders, property owners, developers, others are involved in helping to formulate these plans. And in particular, I want to give a shout out tonight to the Smith Mountain Lake Association on water quality management. For those of you who aren't familiar, the SMLA for decades now has taken the lead in water quality monitoring with a host of volunteers who go out and sample the water and check its quality. And I'm proud to announce that our lake is one of the cleanest, most environmentally sound projects around. When we hit our 50th anniversary back in 2016, The comment was made that this lake was functioning more like a teenager than a senior citizen, thanks to a lot of the efforts for water quality monitoring and management. Finally, I have on this slide highlighted the water management plan, and this is what we're going to get into in greater depth tonight. Next slide, please. So again, the water management plan is a requirement of our federal license, and it's incorporated into the federal license. We developed this plan with input from federal, state, and local agencies and a host of local community stakeholders. So this plan is the playbook. It's the first thing that we consult when we're looking at how to manage water levels in both reservoirs. Among other things, this plan includes requirements for monthly minimum flows. So if you think about it, if we did not have a minimum flow requirement and we're recycling the water between Smith Mountain Lake and Leesville Lake and not releasing any water from Leesville, the Roanoke River would dry up downstream. And of course, we can't allow that. There are other communities depending on that water downstream. Also, fish and wildlife depend on that water for habitat, and others depend on it for recreation and other uses. So that's a big component of our plan. We also have operational restrictions that take place during drought conditions. We've had some high water this year, but it was only a few years ago that we had some concerns over low water. We just didn't get enough rainfall. And this plan helps to guide us during those conditions as well. The plan contains operational requirements for flood control. The plan tells us that we have notification requirements to various partners and agencies during different types of water events. And then finally, the plan has protocols for monitoring and reporting. We're constantly submitting reports up the chain of command in terms of how we're managing the water at the project. Next. Please keep in mind that the Smith Mountain project is part of a much larger watershed, the Roanoke River watershed, which spans 2 states before draining to the Albemarle Sound. It's important to note that there are other lakes and dams downstream of Leesville Lake, and that these are not projects controlled by Appalachian Power, but they are nonetheless dependent on our operations at the Smith Mountain Dam to send water their way. Next. The maps on this page show you the local watersheds that are feeding into the Smith Mountain project. Smith Mountain Lake is fed primarily by the Roanoke River and the Blackwater River, along with a number of tributaries and smaller streams. The map on the left of your screen shows the drainage basin to Smith Mountain Lake. It includes, to the west, areas as far away as Montgomery County, just west of Blacksburg and Christiansburg. It includes areas of Floyd County atop Bent Mountain. It reaches all the way into Botetourt County, and of course includes Bedford County, Roanoke County, and Franklin County, all draining to Smith Mountain Lake. Leesville Lake, the map on the right, is fed by water that's released from the Smith Mountain Dam and also from the Pig River and other smaller streams. These project inflows are driven by precipitation, rainfall, snowfall, surface runoff, and also groundwater releases within this watershed. And that's very important to remember. There's a significant component of inflow which consists of groundwater release. Next. So Appalachian Power is continuously monitoring the National Weather Service forecast. We're also monitoring a series of gauges on the Roanoke, Blackwater, and Pig Rivers to anticipate project inflow. In addition, we're monitoring gauges on the Roanoke River downstream of Leesville at Alta Vista and Brookneal to understand how water is flowing into the project or flowing into the river below the project. The Smith Mountain project is considered balanced when the inflow is equal to the outflow. Water coming into the project is equal to the amount of water we're releasing from the project. For example, in a typical month of November, project inflows are 650 cubic feet per second. That includes approximately 500 cubic feet per second from the Roanoke River, 50 cubic feet per second from the Blackwater River, and about 100 cubic feet per second from the Pig River. And so in a balanced project, we're going to be releasing from the project downstream 650 cubic feet per second. And again, those numbers are typical of a normal conditions November. Please keep those numbers in mind for later in the presentation when we're going to discuss the high water events in 2020, where the inflows were almost an order of magnitude of 100 times greater than typically expected in November. Next. This slide kind of shows you mechanically how we're managing the water between the reservoirs. Again, under normal conditions, water flows through turbines at the Smith Mountain Dam, and that lowers the elevation of Smith Mountain Lake while raising the elevation of Leesville Lake. A 2-foot decrease at Smith Mountain Lake corresponds to a 13-foot increase at Leesville Lake. During high water events, we're only using generation to control water levels. Next. Smith Mountain Lake is said to be at full pond when the water level is at 795 feet elevation above sea level. The picture on the left of your screen shows the dam at Smith Mountain Lake, the spillway with water brimming right up to the spillway. That picture shows you full pond, 795. That's because the dam was designed, engineered, and constructed with a spillway poured in concrete at 795 feet elevation above sea level. When water level rises above the spillway at the Smith Mountain Dam, Smith Mountain Lake is said to be surcharged. That means the water is above 795. It's important to remember that surcharging is part of the project's function as a flood control project. By design, the waters of Smith Mountain Lake can rise up to and occasionally exceed 800 feet in elevation. And for residents at Smith Mountain Lake, that 800-foot elevation is known as the project boundary. Again, looking at this slide with a picture of the spillway, if you could imagine water overtopping the spillway, 1 foot of water going over the spillway raises the level to 796. 2 feet of water going over the spillway raises the level to 797, and so on. Again, the project was designed to accommodate high waters up to and occasionally exceeding 800 feet. Next. So in managing water levels at Smith Mountain and Leesville Lakes, Appalachian Power has to take the following into consideration. Of course, we have to take into consideration the demand for energy. And this isn't so much for economic purposes as much as grid capacity purposes. There are only 2 ways for water to pass through the Smith Mountain Dam. Water can flow over the spillways, or it can run through the penstocks and therefore through the turbines. If water is going through the turbines, that means we're generating electricity, sending electricity to the grid. That means there's coordination that we have to do to make sure that the grid can receive the electricity that we're generating. So we have to take that into account. We also take into account the existing lake levels. That's kind of our starting point. Where are the lakes currently at water levels before the water level, high water level event is anticipated? Of course, we're looking at forecasted inflows into the project. We're looking at inflows into Smith Mountain Lake and Leesville Lake. The key there is that rain doesn't fall uniformly across the region. It doesn't mean there's a uniform amount of water flowing into Smith Mountain Lake and Leesville. The Pig River watershed can be very different than the Roanoke and Blackwater watersheds. We're also looking at forecast inflows downstream of the project. In order for us to release water from Leesville Dam, we have to make sure that the Roanoke River can accommodate the water that we're releasing. Therefore, we're looking at Goose Creek, which is just below Leesville on the Roanoke River. We're also checking the river gauges at Alta Vista and Brookneal. The primary goal in any high flow event is to ensure public safety. Appalachian seeks to balance water flows in order to minimize both upstream and downstream impacts. During flood periods, storm runoff will be stored to the extent storage space is available for the prevention or reduction of harmful river stages downstream. Thank you, Amanda.
Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Amanda. So one of the questions that was submitted, I'm going to read it verbatim. In 2020, 2 Smith Mountain Lake high-level events occurred, which I believe have been the worst since 1987. Is that just an extremely unusual weather coincidence that is beyond the scope of what AEP can manage, or is it an SML water level management deficiency?
So that's a great question. And we actually have a few slides that are dedicated to the most recent high water event. And we have on the call with us on our team, Fred Coburn, who's a real-time market operations resource manager. And what that means, he manages 15 different hydro facilities within the AEP footprint. Kenny Morrison's also on the call. He's our maintenance supervisor for the Blue Ridge hydro plants. and David Bailey, who's Hydro Energy Production Superintendent for our Virginia hydro facilities. I'm going to turn it over to those guys and let them talk a little more about the recent high water events and go into detail on our process and protocols regarding those.
Thanks, Amanda. This is Fred Colburn. I can answer Chris's question, and then we could probably roll through the rest of the presentation, answer many more questions that's been submitted. And then the ones that we don't cover, we can follow up at the end. Yes, this has been an extremely unusual weather. In the last 20 years, the project inflow was above 60,000 CFS only 3 times. In September of 2004, May of 2020, and November of 2020. So we had a long spell between 2004 and 2020 since we've seen these type of inflows into Smith Mountain project. Moving on to continuing on with the presentation, I'll walk through how we went through and prepared and the information we looked at for Hurricane Eta. So on Monday morning, November 9th, AEP had the forebay pulled down almost 1 foot to elevation 794.15 at Smith Mountain, which equals 221,000 CFS of storage. Leesville was at 602.0, which equals 396,000 CFS of storage. So the total project storage on Monday was 617,000 CFS. So AEP continuously monitors the National Weather Service and Advanced Hydrologic River Prediction Service. We prepare for each rain event according to the predictions and forecast. AEP began discussing Hurricane Eta on Saturday, November 7th. Then on Monday, November 9th, AEP started holding internal meetings on the potential for high water. The internal meetings included hydro operations, the plant, engineering, corporate communications, and external affairs. We discussed the current forecast, the river predictions, and determined that we had adequate storage for the upcoming rain event that was predicted. So on this slide, on Monday, the National Weather Service is forecasting Roanoke in the 2.55 inch range for 7 p.m. Tuesday through 7 p.m. Thursday. So going on to the next slide. On Tuesday, November 10th, AEP continued monitoring the National Weather Service. We held our second internal meeting for the potential for high water. The current conditions, Smith Mountain is at 794.21. Leesville is currently at 601.37 with plenty of storage for the Pig River runoff. And you can see in the screenshot here, the National Weather Service has Roanoke in the 2 to 3 inch range for 7 a.m. Tuesday to 7 a.m. Friday. On to the next slide, please. So on Tuesday, the river prediction issued at 9:24 a.m. by the National Weather Service showed the Roanoke River at Roanoke cresting at 5.3 feet. And then on the next slide, they were showing the river prediction issued at 9:24 a.m. on Tuesday, November 10th by the National Weather Service, the Pig River cresting at 9.1 feet. For the Smith Mountain project, these are the only 2 rivers that the National Weather Service issues river predictions for. So as we move on into the next slide and Wednesday, by late afternoon on Wednesday, November 11th, with a heavy localized rainfall, all of the river gauges started trending up faster than predicted by the National Weather Service. The preparations AEP began on Monday ensured that the most storage possible for the project, with Leesville brought down to 600.4 feet. And as you can see here, the 48-hour rainfall forecast shows the Roanoke area in the 1.5 to 3 inch range for 7 a.m. Wednesday through 7 a.m. Friday, November 13th. So as we move on to the next slide, the National Weather Service did update their river predictions on Wednesday. At 7:44, the National Weather Service updated the river predictions for the Roanoke River from 5.3 to 7.4 feet. And on the next slide, it shows the Pig River near Sandy Level updated from 9.1 feet to 14.9 feet. And at this point, both of the river predictions on Wednesday was just for an action flood stage. And then as we move into the following slide, now we're talking about on Wednesday, once we're into the high water event, what had happened. So with surcharging Smith Mountain forebay to 798.6, which is moderate flood stage, Leesville utilizing all but storage with an elevation of 612.8, AEP held the downstream flooding at Alta Vista to 23.4 feet, which is just under the moderate flood stage of 24 feet. Further downstream at Brookneal, they were experiencing major flooding at 34.51 feet, which was the 5th highest crest on record for Brookneal. So our primary goal in a high flow event is to ensure public safety. Appalachian seeks to balance water flows in order to minimize both upstream and downstream impacts. During flood periods, storm runoff, which will be stored to the extent storage space is available for the prevention or reduction of harmful river stages downstream. Per design, Smith Mountain can surcharge to 800 feet or 5 feet above normal pool. So as we move on to the next slide, as it turned out, the Roanoke River crested at 14.07 feet. This is 6.67 feet higher than predicted on Wednesday, which was the 13th highest crest on record for the Roanoke River at Roanoke. And then moving on to the next slide. Although the Blackwater the National Weather Service does not issue a river prediction for the Blackwater River at Rocky Mount, the Blackwater crested at 13.76 feet, which is the 10th highest crest on record. And as we move this to the next slide, the Pig River crested at 21.68 feet. This is 6.78 feet higher than predicted on Wednesday. And this is the 7th highest crest on record. So, and to sum up this event for Hurricane Eta, as we already mentioned, the last 20 years, the project inflow at Smith Mountain was above 60,000 CFS only 3 times: September 2004, May 2020, and November 2020. If AEP would not have proactively managed the underpredicted rain event by surcharging the forebay at Smith Mountain and passed the project inflow of over 60,000 CFS, the potential flooding at Alta Vista per the USGS rating table would have been 34.62 feet, which is major flood stage. The 3.6 foot surcharge at Smith Mountain reduced the flooding by 11 feet at Alta Vista. Appalachian Power Company and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers operate under Memorandum of Understanding concerning the operation of Smith Mountain Project for flood control. This MOU has been in place since 1966. During flood periods, storm runoff will be stored to the extent storage space is available for the prevention or reduction of harmful river stages downstream. And with that, I can toss it back to Amanda to continue on with the presentation.
Okay, Chris, I think actually we'll toss it back to you to see if you have any other questions for us.
Yeah, so I've got a laundry list of questions here, Amanda, that most of which were addressed in the presentation, but there are a number that I'm going to present, and we'll ask whichever panelist from AEP who would like to address to unmute yourself. Before we jump into the questions, if your phone or computer is not already on mute, if you could kindly mute that. I've went through the entire participant list and I think I have everyone muted, but if I've missed someone, there is some background noise. So if you could kindly mute your phone, that would be helpful. All right, so the first question, the USGS gauge at Brooknell is listed in the plant notes. How does a downstream gauge indicate the projected level of water?
Hey, Fred or Kenny, do you want to take that one?
Hey, Amanda, this is Kenny Morrison. Yeah, I'll take that question. It's a good question. And the person who made the question is correct. It does not indicate the projected level of the water, but AEP does release water from Leesville in an attempt to hit target flows at Brooknell, and this is per our water management plan. And we also like to look at Brooknell just to understand the water impacts downstream of our releases. So this is something that is on our plant notes page, but that's the reasons.
Thanks, Kenny.
All right, again, from a mute perspective, if you haven't already, please mute your line. We're still getting some background noise. This next question, Amanda, this is regarding the model that AEP uses, and the question reads as follows. How old is AEP's model, and has there been any attempt to adapt that model to climate change and the resulting increased frequency of extreme weather events?
And this is Liz Parcell with American Electric Power, and it's a good question. For high water events, AEP uses the National Weather Service's weather forecast and river predictions to prepare for the additional inflow. For all other events, AEP uses a software model that takes into account both historical and current data to forecast where Smith Mountain Lake levels are trending. The model projects out up to 16 weeks into the future. The historical data goes back to 1930 data on an ongoing basis. The true purpose of the model is to address or respond to scenarios where water inflow to the lake is low over an extended period of time. AEP runs the model daily. Because the model is updated with current data on an ongoing basis, it auto-adapts to better forecast what will occur over the next weather season and so on. Therefore, changes in precipitation related to climate change are automatically and continuously incorporated into the database.
Okay, Chris.
All right. So Amanda, the next question that was submitted is the recent approval and taking of lake water by Bedford County to meet their water requirements. I'm reading these verbatim. Now dictate water levels to be kept at a certain high level, thus being reluctant to reduce lake levels before storms.
Liz, do you want to take that question as well?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Sure, it says, is the recent approval and taking of lake water by Bedford County to meet their water requirements now dictate water levels to be kept at a certain high level, thus being reluctant to reduce lake levels before storms?
No, Bedford County has a water withdrawal at the 787-foot elevation contour, so we don't have to keep the water elevation at a higher level.
So Liz, your volume or audio faded out a little bit there. Can you repeat that?
Yes. No, Bedford County Water Authority can withdraw water at the 787-foot elevation contour.
Okay, so another question. Again, some of these were covered in the presentation. I'm trying to get through as many as we can. Cannot protocol be changed to dictate reducing the lake sooner during heavy rain forecasts to err on the safe side? Does there need to be a reduction of the normal pond level if AEP can't react faster, say from 794 to a foot lower?
Fred, do you want to take that question?
Hey, Amanda, this is Kenny. I can take that question. As we stated before, that we continuously monitor the National Weather Service and the Advanced Hydraulic River Prediction Service as well. We prepare for each rain event according to their predictions and forecasts. I've been doing this for quite a few years, and each high flow event is a little bit different one way or another. So there really isn't one protocol that can cover all the possible different scenarios. I hope that kind of answers your question.
Okay, continuing, Amanda, this question reads as follows. Is the commercial side of recreation at the lake more important now? That is, keeping the water at a higher level for tourism at the cost of landowner destruction, cleanup, and repair costs?
This is David Bailey. I can answer that question. The short answer to that is no. Appalachian Power operates Smith Mountain Project in accordance with its water management plan that was prepared in consultation with the Virginia Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, which now is also called the Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources, the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, the Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Tri-County Lakes Administration Commission, the Smith Mountain Lake Association, Leesville Lake Association, Roanoke River Basin Association, and Dominion Power. So all the needs and interests were taken into consideration in the development of the water management plan that we go by. I hope that answers that question.
Thanks, David. So Amanda and the team, the next question reads, why the lake is now remaining stable versus varying with pump back and release as in the past?
I think that's, Kenny, do you want to handle that question?
Yeah, no problem. Typically this time of year with the temperatures, you know, they're not too cold in the morning and they're definitely not too hot in the evenings. So typically it's pretty mild weather this time of year. And when there's mild weather, there's less demand for power. So if we're not generating, we're not pumping back as well. So typically the spring and the fall is when you'll see less generation and pumping from Smith Mountain.
Thanks, Kenny. So Amanda, again, these are not censored questions. So this is a question for the team, and it reads, does AEP feel, as most residents on the lake, that they completely mishandled the last event on November 12th?
I'll let you speak to that question.
Okay, yeah, and I think we mentioned to that a little bit on the slide deck, but no, we don't feel that. If AP would not have proactively managed the under predicted rain event by the National Weather Service by surcharging the forebay at Smith Mountain and passed the project inflow of 63,000, of over 63,000, the potential flooding at Allisonia would have been 34.62 feet, which is a major flood stage. So, you know, when we walk through our slides and we prepared to the information that the National Weather Service was giving us, and we prepared accordingly. So I hope that answers the question.
Fair response, Fred. I've got one last question, Amanda, that falls under the kind of process. I'm sorry, two remaining questions under the process and procedure buckets of questions that were submitted. And one of them is curious why on the AEP hydro plant levels and flows site, the Smith Mountain tailwater parentheses CFS flow rate is never posted. That may fall under the communication bucket, but I thought I would ask.
No.
I'll go ahead and take that. I'm sorry. This would be considered market sensitive information as it would be an indication of her generation.
Okay. And Amanda, I have one last question, and this was submitted with respect to an inspection, and it reads as follows. Did an underwater dam inspection requiring full pond occur shortly before the rains, precluding early release of water?
This is David Bailey. I'll answer that question. We did have planned inspection work ongoing. That work was scheduled at least a year in advance, and these are mandated inspections by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And also we had some work going on, some testing and so on that was mandated by the National Energy Regulatory Commission, NERC. So we had these inspections that were planned in advance and going on. However, whenever we saw that we had the rain event coming, we modified our schedule and our plans, and we returned units back to service early on to manage the high water event. And as Fred said before, early in the week, we had a foot of storage in Smith Mountain Lake. So, at that point, we had no need to generate anyway. But as the rains came in, we did release units, return them back to service, and manage the water event, the high water event.
Thanks, David. All right, Amanda. So I'm going to, in the interest of time, that did conclude the process or procedure questions that may or may not have been necessarily covered in the presentation that weren't duplicate in nature. So I did want to pivot to the communication side because we do have a few questions related to improvements and the platforms that AEP uses to send out plant notifications, etc. So if you want to share your screen back to the presentation, Amanda, I think I see that now. Good. And I'll let you turn it over to your communication counterpart.
Let me unmute here. So yes, there were a number of communication questions that we received, and we know that you guys did, as well as the Smith Mountain Lake Association. And George Porter, our communications consultant in our APCO office in Roanoke, is going to handle those questions. So George, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Good evening. As Amanda said, my name is George Porter. I do communications for Smith Mountain Project as well as the social media. I think a lot of the questions that we have received throughout the process have been about how we communicate and how we can better communicate to our property owners. Most residents are asking about a advanced notification system to send out when there's lake level. And we do have that in place right now as per our water management plan. As you guys can see on the screen, anytime the decision is made to surcharge or go over full pond at the Smith Mountain Project, we have a notification list that we are required per that plan to send out. The first steps involve sending information to our county governments. That includes all 4 counties in that area, reaching out to their 911 non-emergency numbers. We send information to the local marinas to let them know. We send information to those non-governmental organizations such as the Smith Mountain Lake Association, as well as TLAC, Leesville Association, etc. And we also send information out to those agencies, Virginia DEQ, and game inland fisheries, also known as the wildlife resources. Now, once that information is sent to those stakeholders, I immediately send information to the media, realizing that they have a broader stroke to communicate information about expected water levels at Smith Mountain. So that goes out to the local media. We also post that information on our AEP.com website to advise property owners that that information or that the lake levels will increase over full pond. From there, in addition to the water management plan, we also add that information to our Facebook account. We have a Smith Mountain Project Facebook account, and we do that because we see a wide scope of interest on that Facebook account. As soon as information is published, property owners begin to share that information to each other. They tag others. Local marinas will put that on their page as well and share that information out. So we feel like we can reach a lot of property owners through our Facebook account. We do understand that a lot of property owners are asking for a better notification system. So what we did, we reached early part of the summer, we included Nextdoor into our social media platform. What Nextdoor allows us to do is to send information out to property owners or anyone who is connected in that Smith Mountain or Leesville or that Nextdoor community. We can now send out alerts to those property owners via email. They can receive push notifications through that app, as well as they can receive text alerts to their phone. They just have to go into their Nextdoor account and sign up and enable that for communication purposes.
All right, George, I'm going to run through a few of the questions that are to be directed to you or for other stakeholders on the team. So the first question reads, the current Smith Mountain Lake high water warning above 795 is provided on AEP's website as plant-specific notices. Since AEP email alerts are automatically sent to subscribers who sign up via the Smith Mountain Lake level website, please add the SML planned maximum level along with water level rise rate so lakeside owners can obtain early warning of flooding and high water levels.
So that website is run by Mr. Lipscomb. He's a Smith Mountain property owner. He has no affiliation with AEP, so we wouldn't be able to add any of our information on his website. But we do offer means of communication through our website and our Facebook and Nextdoor.
Thanks, George. A few more questions for you, sir. Could AEP, and this was alluded to earlier in your chart, could AEP develop a system to provide advance notification to property owners when SML high water levels are expected?
Right. As mentioned, we do have that in place per the water management plan. Like I said, we send information out to those multiple agencies and local county government. So it's and I think the most important thing that we want to stress to property owners is that as soon as we make the decision or that we need to surcharge Smith Mountain, that information goes out. We're not sitting on that. We're not holding that back. As soon as we know, within minutes, the information goes to our county governments, it goes to the media, it goes to Facebook, and then it goes to Nextdoor. Everyone is receiving that within a 10-minute window.
Thanks, George. This question reads, is there any type of advisory board that works with the AEP on issues and communication? If so, how is the board selected, and is it made up of both residents and businesses?
Right. So while there's no specific board or advisory board that's official, as everyone has mentioned throughout the presentation, we do work closely with several organizations around the Smith Mountain Project, Smith Mountain Lake, TLAC, the different agencies, and we always take in consideration their information. Anytime we work with our different plans, shoreline, debris, water management, so we do gather information from those organizations, and we take that as we make decisions moving forward.
George, two final questions for you. Does a site exist that property owners can visit to receive frequent updates from the folks in charge of the lake level?
We do have the AEP.com website where we will post water levels on, and it's a hydro website. You can see any existing pond levels for any of our hydro facilities on that website. But I would imagine for that question, for frequent updates, I would say our Facebook account as well as Nextdoor would be the best places to receive that timely information for our customers.
And lastly, George, it reads as follows: AEP offers text and email alerts for power outages. Why can't AEP offer the same warnings for lake levels that could exceed 796?
So those text alerts are for Appalachian Power customers. If you were on our website, you'd have to have an account number to sign up for those text alerts to receive power outage information. And not everyone at the lake is a customer of Appalachian Power. So that's one of the main reasons why we looked at Nextdoor as an option to provide property owners with means to receive notifications such as lake levels rising. So, like I said before, Nextdoor will allow customers to sign up for that, and they can receive emails directly, they can receive push notifications, and they can receive those text alerts.
Thanks, George. Well, Amanda and team, that was the laundry list of questions that were submitted. And again, we're not going to be able to get to every single one of them. And there were a number of questions, and I'll let Larry Jackson kind of take us home on this front, that were submitted that weren't related to this forum, which addressed the high water levels. And Larry, you've been around the lake region for a long time, and wanted to turn it over to you, sir. And before we go, I just wanted to extend thanks to Amanda and to Neil and to George and to the team at large. I've received a number of the text messages or chat messages via Zoom chat, thanking you guys as well, and I'll extend those in a separate message to you. Lastly, there were some additional questions that came in even during the forum that I will also consolidate and send to your team as well, and in the spirit of transparency, to make sure you have everything that was submitted through this as a result of this forum.
Great. Well, Chris, thank you so much for doing this. It's been quite an hour. A lot of good information was able to be passed out. So thank you to the Chamber. Thank you to SMLA for being willing to do this. I also need to thank Lori Smith, because she was really the one that came up with this idea to do a Zoom call. I guess one of the silver linings of this pandemic is that we've learned how to do this, and we're all getting pretty good at it, really. So Lori, thank you for suggesting this to us. I hope it has been informative to everybody at the lake. This is your community. This, I know some would say that we own the lake, but this is really your home. This is your community. You're our neighbor. And so we want you to know how the project is operated, and we want you to have all the information that you need to feel comfortable around the lake. And like Chris said, we know we haven't answered all the questions. There were some questions that were submitted that weren't related to water management, and we wanted to address those. So if you thought this was an informative way of sharing information, I ask that you let that be known so that we can know whether we should do some more of these in the future, even after the pandemic is over, as a way to get the information out. So again, Chris, thank you. Thank you to SMLA, and Merry Christmas to everyone. Happy holidays. Chris, I believe you're muted.
Thank you, Larry. Appreciate that. So we did record this presentation, so I will be working with our IT provider as well as AEP to make this recording publicly available, which will include the presentation. So we will work to try and get that published. We have the registrants from this call, and we will just send out a broadcast message once we can work through the logistics on publishing that asset in the public domain. So again, to echo Larry's parting comments, Merry Christmas to each and every one of you. Stay healthy, stay safe, and have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you for everything. Merry Christmas.